Let's bring in Clive Palmer. We're going to talk to you about the budget.
Well, wait, Clive Palmer's got some great views on basketball administrators in the history of Australia. Clive Palmer, welcome to the program.
Well, I just admire Christine so much for what she's done for the country.
Isn't that lovely?
There are so many women around this country that know in their lives they've been discriminated against. They need to be lifted up. And she's someone that's lifted them to a different
plane. I feel like
plane.
I'm watching a Clive Palmer, Tony Jones interview right now.
Well, this is true. She's just
really?
Yeah, the praise that he's always heaping on Tony Jones.
She's not the best journalist in the world, but she's probably the best. She's one of the best persons.
That's going to be, Peter's going to make Sky run that as a promo.
She's already incorrigible enough to work with. This is not a good way.
She's a great woman, no doubt about that.
Anyway, Clive Palmer,
we'll get to the budget. I think obviously the news today is that you've announced you're not recontesting your seat of Fairfax.
That's right.
Are you, however, considering or planning to run for the Senate?
Well, you know, when you're married, it's a partnership with your wife. And if you want a happy life, you want a happy wife. So before I decide what I'll do, my next move, I'll have to ask my wife what I should do and how it'll impact on her and my children.
Okay.
So I hope to do that. But this afternoon at 3 o'clock, we're announcing some of our new policies for the Senate. And one of the policies that will be announced I can share with you, and that is that parliamentarians should leave Parliament with no entitlements, that to serve the community is more important than serving your own pocket. So if people want to come to Parliament, they should come to do what good they can do and not leave with any entitlements at all.
Well, they've already lost their super. That's changed. Yeah, the one-time
they've still got their gold pass. The Abbott government didn't manage to legislate that.
That's true.
Well, I still get 15% super, which is more than you get if you're
you don't want to give them anything.
Well, I've donated all my salary anyway, but I don't think, we want people that will serve the community. That's the most important thing.
Okay, but just on you though, come on, you can't tell me you haven't already talked about this with your wife. You must have at least talked about Fairfax, presumably. Yeah. Is the Senate a live option for you?
Well, it's a live option, but, I'm such an unpopular person in the country. And if I watch Sky News and Paul Murray, I'm just convinced that I'm a totally useless person and I've never contributed anything for this country or this nation. Why would people want to vote for me?
Do you really think we're running a conspiracy against you?
No, but Paul Murray has me on there all the time, but he never invites me on the show. I'd like to host the Paul Murray show one night and have him as a guest.
I reckon he'd go for that.
Okay, well, all right, he probably would, Paul Murray.
We'll see if we can line it up. We'll see if we can line it up.
But anyway, the budget's really a joke, really. I mean, we've got an economy, $1.5 trillion, 1,500 billion, and we're talking about a deficit of 39 billion, and we're worried about whether it should be 10 billion or not. That's less than 0.5% of our GDP. I mean, really, have you got less than 0.5% of what you earn every year as debt? So we're focusing on that, not focusing on what we should do for the country. Malcolm Turnbull became Prime Minister because he said he wanted to change the economy and Tony Abbott was hopeless. But he's done nothing. He's the second oldest Prime Minister Australia's had, and in 10 years' time, when Scott Morrison finally gets us back to a balanced budget, they'll both be in nursing homes. So I don't know, why the Australian public is misled so much by their politicians.
I'm a little concerned about that because I think Scott Morrison is younger than me, and I'm pretty sure in 10 years' time.
He's morphed with the public service.
We're not going to be in nursing home. Okay, can I just, before we go into the budget, I do want to come back to Fairfax because you said in April that you're the best chance to win in Fairfax, but if I find a better candidate than myself, then I'd be happy to see how else I can serve the Australian people.
Have you found a better candidate?
Have you found a better candidate for Palmer United Party in Fairfax?
Well, I may have. The party may have, Like any political party, you've got to go up for endorsement. You shouldn't assume that you're going to be successful. And I mightn't have been successful in the endorsement, who knows? But they're doing that in a couple of weeks' time. So there'll
be a pre-selection for the seat of Fairfax.
For the seat of Fairfax, yeah.
For the Palmer United Party.
And today we can announce that Martin Brewster is standing against Ewan Jones in the seat of Herbert. And Palmer United got 11% there. And, of course, Ewan was elected on Palmer's preferences. And, of course, those preferences won't be flowing to him this time.
But let me ask you this, though. Straight up answer. Come on, Clive Palmer. Yeah. You would know now in your heart of hearts. Are you running for the Senate or are you walking away from politics?
I don't want to be divorced. Oh, I can tell you, that's the fear. That's the fear of every man. So I've got to talk to my wife first and see what she says, because I'm an ageing politician, ageing businessman. I haven't got many good opportunities ahead of me. I've got to value the wife I've got and the children I've got. So I won't be saying until she says it.
It'd be an interesting contest because obviously Glenn Lazarus, one-time Palmer United, he walked away. Yeah. Pauline Hanson is in the mix in Queensland. Yeah. Is it a live option for you, not just in Queensland, but maybe somewhere else?
Oh no, well, we are running candidates in every state.
But I mean you.
I haven't thought about myself personally. I like to think about the community better. But if you look at the last state election, which is a real challenge, we didn't give out how to vote cards. We got 5.5% of the vote across the state, and we only stood in half the seats. So we really got equivalent to 11%. And that was after Glenn Lazarus had left. It was during the state election. So I think there's a capacity capacity there to win a couple of Senate seats in Queensland. At a double dissolution, the big issue really in the election no one's talked about is the last election, 12% of Australians decided they weren't going to vote for Liberal, Labor or Greens. The polls are saying the same thing's true now. That's a couple of Senate seats in each state. So the balance of power in the Senate is going to be held by the crossbench, not by the Liberal Party or the Labor Party.
So can I just come back one more time to your decision not to run for Fairfax? Because it was only a few weeks ago you made very clear that you were going to run in this seat. You said you would contest it and continue to represent your community. What has changed? Is it simply family reasons, or are there other factors that have weighed into this?
Well, basically family reasons. If you have a look at what Palmer United Party has done anyway, my vote in the House of Representatives is not too significant. It's never been significant, really. We've achieved everything we've achieved in the Senate in the 2014 budget. So that's where the action is, really. It's a little bit boring sitting in Parliament knowing you've got no influence and knowing you can't speak. You only ask a question every 2 weeks.
Well, if you had your time again, would you have run for the Senate in Queensland instead of Fairfax?
No. Because everyone said that we couldn't win a House of Rep seat in a 6 weeks campaign. Now,
I had egg on my face for that. I didn't think you'd win Fairfax.
Everyone said that. So it was good to show that democracy lives in Australia, that people can still have the choice in our country not to vote for new people and encourage other candidates to come in as a role model. I mean, we really want plurality in our country, and democracy and freedom's the most important thing that we've got.
Can we understand something? Because before you set up your own party, on what you're talking about around the budget, around debt, it sounds like you're concerned at the commentariat and the political class over-emphasising the amount of debt in the context of the wider budget.
That's true.
But when you were part of the LNP up in Queensland, banging on about debt, you were part of the brigade of Conservatives that did that.
But I thought, well, I met a nurse and she told me that she used to look after palliative care people. And the last thing that people used to say before they died is they wish they'd done something, or they wish they'd been clean and honest with everyone. And I thought, well, I don't want to be on my deathbed and at least not have done what I thought was the right thing to do, or say what I thought the real situation was. I realised a lot of people in the political establishment have got their whole life there, their salary, they can't afford to say what they want to say. They're in the party structures. And I know I was a life member of the Liberal Party, a life member of the National Party, party spokesman, and we used to control all the politicians, tell them what they could write, tell them how they could speak. But that's not a real way to run a democracy, I don't think. We need more freedom of thought. So I thought, well, I think I've got a good idea. And the other thing I was upset about was that the Liberal Treasurer, Michael Yabsley, told me at the time that he couldn't get a copy of the party's accounts. And that the Liberal Party didn't publish accounts, and he didn't know where the money was coming on. He was responsible for it. That there only 3 people knew where the money was or how it was being spent. It was Peter Cretland, Tony Abbott and her husband. And he was concerned about the finances of the Liberal Party and how they were raising money. Now, we've seen what happens in New South Wales. We've seen that Arthur Sinodonis wouldn't come down here to the Senate inquiry. So I didn't want to stay a member of a party that didn't have accounts or didn't have audited accounts. And if you look at Palmer United, we're #1 in transparency. Everyone knows the money comes from me. It's all declared 100%.
I have to ask, so Clive, come on, our viewers are going to be thinking, he's not running because of the problems with Queensland Nickel. Because of the shutdown of Queensland. Well,
no, but not running for Fairfax.
Not running for Fairfax because of the shutdown at Queensland, because the administrators are moving in, because of the administrators' report. Are you seriously going to sit here and tell us it is all just because of family reasons?
Well, I think from a political point of view, if what you said was true, you wouldn't run for the Senate, or you wouldn't contemplate that, because that takes in North Queensland and Townsville, whereas Fairfax doesn't, right? Since I've been elected, I've been in business 40 years in Australia, had no scandals, no problems. Since I got elected to Parliament, I bucked the system. I've had constant scandals over 3 years, but I've never been charged with anything. Nothing's ever worked out to be true. The courts have given down judgment, say that there's nothing in all these different things, and it's no different with what they're saying now. I could bore your viewers about Queensland Nickel, but there's nothing in any of that either, right? As I said, the truth is that I don't control the world nickel price. But it's not about me. Who cares what happens to Clive Palmer? Hopefully my wife does and my kids do. But anyway, who cares about politicians really? It's what they can do for the country, what they stand for. How much time do we spend having a go at individuals rather than saying what are you going to do for the country? That's the most important thing.
So it sounds like you want to run for the Senate, but you just want to make sure your wife's okay with it.
Well, I don't know. I want to do what my wife does, As you get into your later years, you've got to look. We need gender equality in this country. I'm sure Christine agrees with that. She's after gender superiority. superiority, actually. That's what I think.
Yeah, she's a sexist, that's what you're saying. She's against women, not men.
I don't know where
us mere mortals have to live with this,
Okay, all right. Well, let me ask you this. You did criticise the federal budget today in a number of ways. You did criticise it for supporting jobs in South Australia through its submarine policy and not supporting job-creating programs in North Queensland. But again, aren't people going to look at what's happened with Queensland Nickel, the loss of over 700 jobs?
It is a tragedy, yeah.
It is a tragedy, but the government's had to step in and foot a $74 million bill for entitlements to acknowledge that contribution by the federal taxpayer.
See, we're going to that. I've got to talk about that, right?
Well, I have to go there, Clive Palmer. I can't have you on the program and not ask you these questions.
Well, first of all, I never sacked anyone and not paid their entitlements. That's just what the press have said. The administrator of Queensland Nickel decided to sack everyone and not pay their entitlements. I had $23 million, which I was going to inject into the joint venture to keep everyone employed, and he went against the joint venture agreement, sacked everyone, didn't pay their entitlements. I think it was in October, I met with the Prime Minister in Sydney, and I'd spoken to Ewan Jones on the phone. I said there was a $10 million gap in the cash flow. I said if the Commonwealth covered that for 3 weeks, everyone could keep employed and none of that would have happened. And of course the member for Herbert told me to get lost, right? And the Prime Minister said he would see what he could do, and he did nothing. And when I asked Malcolm what he was doing at that time, he said, I'm making announcements mainly. I've been here since I've been made Prime Minister making announcements. Well, we need a Prime Minister that actually does something. Politics is not just about making announcements. And what I said today...
So are you saying that the government decided they'd rather take the risk of spending $74 million to back in entitlements for your workers rather than give you a $10 million float?
What they said, they'd rather pay $74 million and smash Palmer United and get rid of me politically. Because look how many other people have gone into administration which haven't been covered like I have. What I said today was, just to correct you, was I'm worried about South Australia because there's 14,000 people going to lose their job down there. The Commonwealth government's doing nothing about it. Either is, the state government is down there, the Labor state government's doing something, but the Commonwealth government is doing nothing at all. We're worried about what's happened with all the different administrations. 22,000 workers have lost their job in Queensland in the resource industry. And there's been no coverage about that. But those families are just as important, and the federal government needs to do something. See, politicians in Canberra think they can obfuscate their responsibility of non-interference. Yet in China, they're spending 30 billion yuan today supporting their metals processing industry. In Canada, they're providing free electricity. But the Australian government's doing nothing and just saying we can't interfere with the economy. Well, I've been in the Australian industry for a long time. How can we compete with the Chinese or with the Canadians if we haven't got a level playing field, if our government doesn't support our industry?
I can tell you now, Western Australia, where I've spent a lot of my life, they're struggling with the mining downturn as well.
Sure.
What about this though? A very general question. If you had your time again, in hindsight, is there anything you would have done differently with Queensland Nickel?
Not with Queensland Nickel. I mean, first of all, let me just say that all these reports just say that we took money out of the company is just not true. Not $1 ever went to me personally of Queensland Nickel's money.
Did some of it go to Palmer United Party?
None of Queensland Nickel's money. You see,
the administrators are wrong in their report.
Well, the administrator I had appointed twice before to 2 companies who'd been an administrator. I thought he was okay. He was recommended to me by an LNP executive member when I was in the LNP. I appointed him to Queensland Nickel. I didn't realise I'd changed political parties, and it was a big setup.
You didn't realise, or he didn't?
Well, I didn't realise. I appointed him as administrator.
Right.
In my mind, I didn't think of him as a political person.
Right.
But in actual fact, when I go back, he was. And the report he's written about me is totally false. And at the bottom of it, you'll see he says, oh, this could be the case, but then again, it might not be. But that does political damage. Now, that's been the whole basis of attacking Palmer United since I've been in Parliament.
Can I ask you about Dio Wang?
Yeah, he's a great guy.
Is he going to run again?
Yes, he is. Yeah, I'll be announcing his candidacy later on the day. There's a new for you. He's running with a mate. He got 12.8% of the vote in Western Australia. Why wouldn't he run again? That means 2 senators in Western Australia if he repeats that vote. Everyone says that we'll never do it again, and we keep on doing it. I mean,
have you done any polling in WA?
We have, yeah.
Polling?
Our vote, Dio's vote, I think will be about the same once we run the campaign, but he's certainly going to be re-elected.
Is it your view that there's a disconnect between the reaction? Because I sit here albeit, you know, from a distance as a commentator, and I sort of work on the assumption that all the controversy around you, whether you like it or not, whether it's fair or not, is going to massively, I would have thought, impact on the Palmer United vote. But it's hard to tell. You know, it's one of those things that you speculate about. The same way that it's really hard to tell whether, as independents, Jackie Lambie and Glenn Lazarus are going to do well or badly.
Well, let's have a look at Glenn Lazarus, right? He got about 6,000 votes in Queensland and 225,000 votes from the party. Jackie Lambie in Tasmania got 800 and 22,000 from the Palmer United Party. So, you know, they don't have any political organisation, they don't have any resources, so it'll be very hard for them. But it's not a good look to stand for a party then when it gets tough to bail out of it. And of course, I sympathise with both of them because they were normal people brought into Parliament, and then when we had the balance of power in Parliament, there was enormous pressure both from the Liberal Party and the Labor Party brought to bear on those people. Every day there were people from both parties at their offices trying to get them to pull out or to not block something in the Senate. That's fine, but Dio and I had more experience, so we were more interested in policy.
Palmer to be competitive, though, for the Palmer United Party, that is, you're going to need to bankroll it. Are you up for that? I mean, that was one of the key things I know that strategically you came in with pretty precise campaigns in those last X number of days and really got your vote to where it is.
Well, I had run a lot of campaigns before.
I realise
a lot of these guys hadn't run campaigns before. They'd forgotten what the art of politics was about, and it's not. It's about the message and what you can do for someone. That's why they'll vote for you, not because of Clive Palmer. It's the message.
Can I ask you one kind of off-the-wall question? But you've made a few comments about being the target or the subject of political action by state and federal governments. You're under investigation by ASIC. The Turnbull government just boosted ASIC funding and powers.
They probably need to boost it if they're investigating me.
Well, do you think there's anything personal in that, or is it purely about the banks?
Well, Scott Morrison said he had to lean on ASIC to take action against me. And that's not a good thing to say, because after all we believe in the separation of the executive from our prosecutorial things, but actually there's no charges against me. I've done nothing wrong. If not agreeing with the Liberal or Labor Party is thinking we should have a third force in Australia is an offence, well, I'm guilty. But that's all I've done, really. But they're pretty upset because they were all little young Liberals when I was in the party, passing the little resolutions, but they never achieved anything in life. I mean, I've had $12 billion of investment in Western Australia, employed 60,000 people in the country. What have they done, really, other than run fates and raffles?
Clive Palmer, we appreciate you joining us. We know you've got to get to question time.
God bless you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.